Every single year, millions of American gardeners walk into their local garden center and walk out spending $40, $60, sometimes over $100 on fertilizers, soil amendments, and plant boosters, bags of synthetic nitrogen, bottles of liquid kelp, granules that promise bigger tomatoes, faster growth, stronger roots. And every single year, those same gardeners end up frustrated. Their plants look okay, not great, just okay. Meanwhile, somewhere in rural Pennsylvania, Ohio, or Indiana, an Amish farmer is growing the most jaw-dropping garden you have ever seen in your life. Deep green leaves, enormous yields, soil so rich and dark it almost looks like coffee grounds. And that farmer has not bought a single bag of fertilizer in decades. That is not an accident, and it is not magic. It is a method so simple, so affordable, and so effective that once you understand how it works, you will never look at your kitchen trash the same way again. What they are burying costs about $3, sometimes less. You almost certainly have it in your home right now. And the science behind why it works will completely change how you think about feeding your garden. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share goes against almost everything the modern gardening industry wants you to believe. Before we get into it, I want to ask you something. Drop it in the comments right now. What is the single biggest struggle you face in your garden every season? Is it poor soil that just will not produce? Weak plants that never seem to thrive no matter what you add? Or maybe you are just tired of spending money on products that overpromise and underdeliver? Tell me below. This community is full of experienced growers and homesteaders, and sometimes the best advice comes from each other. Now let us talk about the real problem here, because it runs deeper than most people realize. Modern fertilizer is one of the most brilliantly marketed products in the history of consumer gardening. Walk into any garden center and the shelves are absolutely packed with options. There are fertilizers for tomatoes specifically, fertilizers for roses, fertilizers for lawns, for shrubs, for container plants, for seedlings. There are slow-release pellets and fast-acting sprays and organic blends and synthetic concentrates. The options are overwhelming, and the price tags are getting harder to ignore every single season. But here is what most of those products are actually doing. They are feeding your plants directly. Short bursts of available nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium delivered quickly to the root zone. And yes, you will see a response. Plants green up fast, they push new growth. It looks impressive for a few weeks. The problem is underneath the surface. Synthetic fertilizers, when overused, do almost nothing to improve your actual soil. In fact, many conventional fertilizers actively reduce the population of beneficial microorganisms living in your soil. Those microorganisms are not a bonus feature. They are the entire engine of a healthy, productive garden. They break down organic matter. They make nutrients available to plant roots. They fight off soil-borne disease. They improve drainage and water retention at the same time. Without them, your soil becomes increasingly dependent on external inputs just to function. You buy fertilizer because your soil needs it. Your soil needs it because you keep buying fertilizer. It is a cycle that benefits exactly one group of people, and it is not you. The Amish figured this out generations ago. Not because they had access to advanced soil science research, though the science absolutely backs them up. They figured it out through observation, through paying attention to what happened in fields that were managed with organic material year after year versus fields that were pushed hard with external inputs. Versus fields that were pushed hard with external inputs. The difference was not subtle, it was dramatic. And the core of their approach came down to something almost embarrassingly simple. They feed the soil, not the plant. The specific kitchen scrap at the center of this video is something almost every household in America generates every single day, without thinking twice about it. We are talking about food scraps, but not composted in a pile out back for 6 months, not processed or dried or turned into powder, raw, buried directly into the soil in a method that is centuries old and has a name that most modern gardeners have never heard. It is called trench composting. And the Amish version of it, passed down through generations of practical farming families, is one of the most quietly powerful soil building techniques that exists. Here is how it works at its most basic level. You dig a trench in your garden bed or between your planting rows. Roughly 8 to 12 inches deep is ideal, though we will get into the specifics in a moment. You fill the bottom of that trench with raw kitchen scraps, vegetable peels, fruit cores, coffee grounds, eggshells, wilted greens, the ends of onions and carrots. The things you normally toss straight into the trash without a second thought. You cover them with the soil you dug out, and then you walk away. Over the next several weeks, something extraordinary happens beneath the surface. The raw organic material begins to break down. Microorganisms explode in population around the decomposing scraps. Earthworms migrate from across your entire garden toward that zone. The decomposing material releases a slow, steady, perfectly balanced stream of nutrients directly into the surrounding soil. Unlike synthetic fertilizer, there is no spike and crash. There is no salt buildup. There is no risk of burning roots. The release is gradual, sustained, and deeply nourishing, and the soil structure that develops in that trench zone becomes something special. Rich, loose, moisture-retentive, but well-drained. Exactly the kind of soil that plant roots explore aggressively, sending out dense networks in search of biological activity. The $3 cost I mentioned in the title is not a gimmick. If you are paying anything at all, it might be for a small bag of bone meal or wood ash to add to the mix, which some experienced practitioners include for specific benefits we will cover shortly. But the core ingredient, the kitchen scraps themselves, cost you nothing. You are already generating them. You are currently throwing them away. Now let us talk about what to include and what to avoid. Banana peels are exceptional. They are high in potassium, which drives flowering, fruiting, and disease resistance. If you are growing tomatoes, peppers, squash, or any fruiting crop, banana peels buried near the root zone make a measurable difference. Coffee grounds are another powerhouse. They are rich in nitrogen, which drives leafy growth and deep green color. They also slightly acidify the surrounding soil as they break down, which is beneficial for blueberries, strawberries, tomatoes, and many other popular garden crops. If you have a drip coffee maker running every morning, you are producing a genuinely valuable soil amendment and currently flushing it into your trash can every single day. Eggshells decompose more slowly than soft scraps, but they release calcium steadily over an extended period. Calcium is critical for cell wall development in plants. Blossom end rot in tomatoes and peppers. One of the most frustrating problems home gardeners face is almost always a calcium availability issue. Burying crushed eggshells near your tomato planting zones is one of the simplest and most effective preventative measures you can take. Vegetable scraps of almost any kind work beautifully. Onion ends, carrot tops, wilted lettuce, corn husks, melon rinds. The more variety you include, the broader the nutritional profile. Now, here is what you want to avoid. Meat scraps, bones, and dairy products are not appropriate for shallow trench composting near your garden. They attract animals. They decompose slowly and unevenly, and they can introduce pathogens that you do not want near edible crops. Cooked foods with heavy oils or seasonings are similarly problematic. Stick to raw plant-based kitchen waste, and you will have no issues. Citrus peels are a topic that generates a lot of debate. Some gardeners avoid them based on the idea that they repel earthworms or inhibit microbial activity. The research on this is mixed at best. In moderate amounts, citrus peels are fine and actually add beneficial compounds as they break down. In large quantities, they can temporarily slow things down. Use them in moderation, and you will be fine. Let us talk about placement. Because where you dig your trench matters almost as much as what you put in it. The most effective approach, and the one that aligns most closely with traditional Amish practice, is to trench directly alongside your existing planting rows or within your beds before the season begins. If you are preparing a new bed in spring, you can dig trenches every 18 to 24 inches across the entire planting area, fill them with scraps, cover them, and then plant directly above or between those zones 2 to 3 weeks later once initial decomposition has begun. For established gardens, the approach shifts slightly. You want to work between rows, being careful not to disturb existing root systems. A trench 6 inches wide and 10 inches deep, running the length of a planting row, filled with scraps and covered, will begin improving the soil in that zone within weeks and continue feeding it for months. There is also a technique called the keyhole trench system that some experienced practitioners use for intensive raised bed gardening. A central composting trench runs through or alongside the bed, and planting zones radiate outward from it. As plant roots extend naturally in search of nutrients and moisture, they find the decomposing material and thrive. The results in small space gardening situations can be genuinely remarkable. One thing worth mentioning here, and this is something that often gets overlooked in discussions of trench composting, is the importance of depth. Too shallow and decomposing material sits close enough to the surface that it can attract surface pests or dry out before it fully breaks down. 8 to 12 inches is the sweet spot for most climates and soil types. In very sandy soils, going a couple of inches deeper can help retain moisture around the decomposing material long enough for it to do its work. Decomposing organic material in a trench acts like a sponge. As it breaks down, it creates a zone of highly absorbent material deep in the soil profile. That zone holds moisture far longer than the surrounding native soil. In a dry summer, that difference can be the line between a garden that struggles and a garden that produces through drought. This is why Amish gardens and the gardens of traditional farming communities across Europe and Asia who used similar techniques long before synthetic fertilizer existed tended to be so resilient. They were not just feeding the soil. They were building a water reservoir underneath their crops simultaneously. One action, multiple compounding benefits. That is the hallmark of traditional farming intelligence at its best. In regions where summer heat and dry spells are a regular challenge, this water retention benefit can be as valuable as the nutrition. There is one more layer to this. Earthworms. When you bury fresh organic material in a trench, you are essentially sending a signal through the soil. Every earthworm within range can detect it. They migrate toward it. They feed, they reproduce. Their castings, which are deposited throughout the surrounding soil as they move, are the most nutrient-dense soil amendment in nature. Vermicompost, which is the commercial product made from worm castings, sells for $20 to $40 for small bags in garden centers. Trench composting generates it in place, throughout your actual growing zone, for free. A healthy earthworm population also physically improves soil structure. They create channels that allow air and water to penetrate deep. They break apart compaction. They accelerate decomposition. They are, in every practical sense, the most valuable free resource a gardener has access to, and trench composting is one of the most reliable ways to build and sustain their population season after season. Amish farmers understand this intuitively because they have watched it happen for generations. Soil that is consistently fed with buried organic material does not just get more fertile over time. It gets more alive, more complex, more resilient. And that compounding improvement is something that no bag of fertilizer on any garden center shelf can replicate, no matter what the label promises. As the season winds down and you start thinking about next year, there is a practice worth adopting that experienced trench composters swear by. Keep a small bucket or container in your kitchen specifically for garden scraps. Banana peels, coffee grounds, eggshells, vegetable trimmings. When the bucket fills, take it out to the garden and start a new trench. Do this consistently throughout the growing season and you are building soil fertility continuously, not just once in spring. Rotate your trench locations from year to year. This distributes the soil improvement evenly across your entire growing area rather than concentrating it in one zone. Over 3 to 4 seasons of consistent practice, the cumulative effect on your soil's health, structure, and productivity is something that experienced practitioners describe as genuinely transformative. The simplest, most powerful things in gardening rarely come in a bag with a colorful label. They come from paying attention to what the soil actually needs and giving it that consistently in the most direct and natural way possible. That is what the Amish figured out. That is what traditional farming communities around the world practiced for centuries before synthetic inputs made everyone forget. And that is what your garden is waiting for. Start with one trench, one bucket of kitchen scraps. $3 or less, and probably zero if you skip the amendments entirely. Do it this week and watch what happens to the life in your soil. Drop a comment below and let me know what you are growing this season and whether you have ever tried trench composting before. I read every single one, and this community always has something worth learning from.